Hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode in a series of presentations on the state of economics by the Venture Company. In this episode, I will cover the urgent need to reinvent economics. My name is George Van Hogarden, Managing Director of the Venture Company. The United States is widely perceived and glorified as the leader of the free world, a proclamation we echo and respond to with a great sense of pride and responsibility. A foolish pride, though, hiding our fundamental misunderstanding of freedom and evolution. For real freedom is in the eye of the beholder, and not ours to keep or dictate. Every country in the world has a right to establish its own sovereign definition and implementation of freedom based on the evolution of its unique cultural aspirations, where its citizens have the right to establish individual freedoms within the boundaries of collective freedom established by its domicile. So real freedom is a relativity theory that cannot and shall not be guided by anyone's absolutism, to each his own. Who is to blame for the illusion of freedom we deploy today? Us, who deployed the wrong religion, or the many countries that blindly followed us? Truth is, we must all come to our senses of how we value each other. Thomas Paine stated, "We have it within us to reinvent our world anew." And I agree, because we in the United States are generally well-meaning people living in an extraordinary society where dissidence is not only allowed, but has contributed greatly to our reinvention in the past. It is time to show the world what we are made of, by setting a better example of how we run our own country first. We can no longer allow our people to be enslaved by a financial system 11 times the size of production that threatens the stability and renewability of our economy. We cannot allow a quarter of our children, in certain states, to wonder where their food will come from. We cannot leave our public education system unable to fund and fend for itself and expect it to breed real entrepreneurs who change the world for the better. We cannot allow drug-infused consumer apathy of 70% of Americans, costing $329 billion, to destroy the opportunities for the next generation. We cannot be content to spend more money on incarceration than education. We cannot accept our country to be led by a presidency elected by not much more than 15% of our population. We must wake up when other countries begin to question us publicly on the excellence of the democracy we preach. We must lead more intelligently, not by attempting to rule the world with the dogma of ever-complicating absolutism focused on our commonalities, but with the relativity of freedom that communicates an understanding and an appreciation of our differences. We must reinvent the systems that harbor and breed desired behavior and regain the trust of our own people. To do so, we must be prepared to reinvent some fundamental religions of our past. Starting at the top, we must challenge how we define and deploy the very cause of freedom, a newly established integrity of freedom that subsequently leads to the recreation of consequential principles and systems of economics. We must build systems to follow our best understanding of the evolution of mankind, for the simple fact that we will always be subjugated to it. Our current systems of economics do not work, and here's how they must change. I will compare what we have, in red on the left, with what we should have, in white on the right. Here we go. Today's predictions for the future are derived from a stale religion of economics or a derivative of the old sold as new. Religions, by definition, are resistant to change. They declare absolutism and portrayals of the truth that shall not be questioned. But they must. Our behavior must adapt constantly to changing externalities of evolution, changes in geographies, responsibilities, leadership, climate change, population growth, illness, poverty, resources. Evolution is dynamic and unstoppable. So why do we use a static rulebook of economics for an environment in need of constant change? Why do we expect a harness of absolutism, math, to accurately depict an ever-changing equilibrium of nature's relativity? Today's economics are simply incompatible with evolution. Thomas Jefferson proclaimed all men are created equal in the 1770s U.S. Declaration of Independence. And indeed, 99% of our DNA is the same. Our prevailing religions of economics work off that same assumption. The problem is the assumption has been proven so fundamentally wrong. What is so different in all of us is not the mere 0.1% in DNA composition, rather the unique sequencing of that small portion of our DNA is what makes us truly stand out. Evolution relies on the discovery and adaptations of those well-honed differences to evolve. Numbers and formulas are findings and derivatives of past performance within a predefined scope and set of circumstances. They reflect a situation that has already occurred, nebulous hindsight. Let's highlight an example. Are the sum of goals scored in a game of soccer an indication of the quality of the game? Of course not. Do the same goals scored in another game suggest identical gameplay? Of course not. So why do we assign so much value to economic performance measured by GDP or other numbers? Clearly, not everything that can be counted on. Outliers who redefine the future are derived from the audacity of freedom, the freedom to challenge religions of the past combined with the foresight to envision a brave new world. To continue the soccer corollary, the performance of real-world economics is determined by those paying to watch the game from the bleachers. Gameplay, not the score, decides whether people want to come back for more and participate. Our religion of economics revolves around price, commonly remunerated by money. But price loses its value when money loses its trust. And as most financial institutions have been found guilty of financial malpractice, the loss of trust in money erodes the economic importance of price. Economics is not at all about numbers. Economics in ancient Greek literally means rules of the household. Paradoxical rules meant to deploy maximum individual freedom without causing harm to collective freedom. Freedom to sustain our evolution with the strongest gene pool as its renewable resource wherever freedom takes us. The long tail, described by Chris Anderson, formerly with The Economist and Wired, describes a phenomenon of reality that refutes the basic premise of markets in today's economics. Think about this. Amazon sells more books that are not in the top 10,000 than are. A research study finds 74% of all travel is to and from quote-unquote unpopular destinations. Some 75% of books rented out at the Palo Alto Public Library are non-popular books. When trade between people approaches even a remote proxy of unlimited supply conjoined with unlimited demand, artificial market typecastings fail to describe us. People who define markets also define who get to play and the type of transactions performed. A need defined by the most brazen violation of freedom, and thus in violation of the evolution of the real world. Our prevailing religions of economics assume people behave rationally in some recognizable fashion, a pattern recognized from the past from which an extrapolation to the future is suggested. Yet, as I explain on my blog in The Evolution of Evolution, the sustainability of our evolution is predicated on many predictable downstream optimizations replaced periodically by the dissidence of quote-unquote irrational upstream innovation to act as evolution's renewable impetus. New economic systems must therefore cherish the exploitation of irrational human behavior derived from freedom. If supply and demand would regulate our markets, in the words of Henry Ford, we would have built faster horses. Markets are artificial constructs with stifling and outdated typecastings of needs, wants, and desires the minute they are defined. Markets are boxed expectations of behavior with no reflection on reality. Markets are man-made mechanisms of false truism. Instead, people trade based on their own perception of value within the context of their unique needs, wants, and desires. Regardless of the typecastings, markets wants its participants to conform to. Today's economic systems systemically ignore the full dimension of human evolution. They lean heavily on our sense of belonging and our commonalities to segregate people as either acting on the supply or the demand side of artificial typecastings, with supposed rational behavior and the fear of social expulsion driving the participation in oligarchically controlled market into endless subpriming of the past. The power of people is not predicated on our commonalities, but on our meaningful differences, in the way they adapt to evolve and support an ever-changing equilibrium with nature. We must build a system that stimulates the exposure of our differences, rather than remain stuck in a system that gives praise to our conformance to commonalities. Wealth creation and wealth distribution are top of mind to our political leaders, who comfortably forget wealth is oligarchically controlled as a result of the fundamental dislocation between money and evolutionary merit. Hence, more wealth, without an adjustment to the systems assigning the merit of wealth, will cause a more unjust allocation of wealth than we already have. The creation of the tobacco industry created wealth and a significant contribution to our GDP leaderboard position. But what did it do to human evolution? Respiratory disease stemming from smoking is now the third leading cause of death in the United States, for which the next generation is still coughing up the skyrocketing medical insurance premiums as a result. Economic merit ought to be redefined along the axis of evolutionary value to the human race, a value in constant equilibrium with the evolution of nature. We must learn how we value each other in the context of evolution. Because if we continue at this pace, our evolution will be shorter-lived than the natural resources at our disposal. Our absolutism of freedom breeds systems that artificially segment behavior and oligarchically assign merit, in some cases using strong-arm tactics, that destroy the freedom needed to discover outliers so crucial to our evolution. Those systems increase evolutionary false positives and trash evolution's false negatives. And when a sizable population of our children do not know where their next meal is going to come from, they too are being cut out from the economic opportunity that lies within them. The next inventor might just be among them. Let me remind you, not everyone can be an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur can come from anywhere. So we simply cannot evolve to the best of our ability without a renewed definition and implementation of economics and the freedom bestowed within. We must redefine and redesign economics to, for the first time, become a reliable proxy of evolution, an invention we proudly call renewable economics. For more information, visit us at venturecompany.com or call us at 646-580-0740. Thank you.